Sea devil.
It's coming straight for us.
That's impossible. Let him change. Paraqued.
Where's the crew?
That'll be us.
We don't stand a chance.
Yeah, did you just stand up like this? Just stand up like this? You're like a kid sometimes. Thanks. Say hello to my crew. To my crew. The world has been disrupted.
Because of you. Because of what you unleashed.
You want to create chaos.
You can't hide in
Land the cannons. The ship is going down. Down.
And good evening and welcome to From the Archive. Tonight we are talking a little bit of Doctor Who. Probably most of you knowing who are watching knows that on Sunday, Easter Sunday, the latest Doctor Who special aired, the second to last Jodie Whittaker episode. And tonight we're going to be talking about that. I have a panel that I will be introducing shortly, but a couple things I wanted to bring up to everybody before we get too far into things. First, I'm going to ask, could you all please share this video out? Please let other people know that we are doing this tonight, because this is an interactive forum. So what I'm hoping to get tonight, apart from my esteemed learned colleagues here that we're going to be talking to shortly, that I want to hear your response to the episodes. I want you to put your comments in. So we're going to play them. We're going to put them on screen, I should say. So the only thing I'm going to ask, and this is just so that we can keep things fun and light, that please know, it's, in my opinion, it's okay to not like the episode. It's okay not to like the doctor or the current production team. But what I do ask is that if you're going to put that into comments or anything, please do it in a respectful manner as well as constructive. You know, I mean, if you don't like something, why don't you like it? And you know, explain it to us. Let us know. Alternatively, I do want to say to people too, if you hear someone say, I don't like the 13th Doctor, please don't immediately assume that they don't like women or that they are, you know, they are, you know, sexist, you know, or any of that stuff. It works both ways. We're here to have a good time tonight. We're having a good conversation. So please consider that, consider others. You know, I know Doctor Who is a very hot topic for a lot of people, and, you know, especially with the Chibnall era and whatnot. And we're just trying to have a conversation, some dialogue about what we just saw, that coming soon trailer, right? So there's a lot to talk about tonight, and we're hoping that you will take part with us. So please let other people know we're doing this. Also, you need to, once again, we're discussing the whole story. So there's going to be spoilers. If you have not seen this episode of Doctor Who, and you're planning on doing so, you don't want it to be ruined, you do not want to watch this tonight, okay? We do not want to spoil it for you. We do not want to ruin anything for you, but you got to know we're going to be talking about the story in depth. So please make sure that you are aware of what's going on. So as we get started, we're going to introduce our folks here in a second. But before we get started, I wanted to show the last time we had seen the Sea Devils in Doctor Who. I'm going to take us back to 1984. So take a look at this.
Cervix, commander of Elite Group 1.
Victor, sole survivor of the Silurian Triad, and my companions, Skibus and Tarpok. We welcome the revival of our blood-related comrades.
We are yours to command.
All is prepared.
So obviously at that point, Peter Davison was the Doctor, and that was Warriors of the Deep. Now, 2022 is the 50th anniversary of the first time the Sea Devils were ever in Doctor Who. So I wanted to play a little bit of that too. Let's take a look. This is from the 1st of April, 1972. This is episode 6, not the whole thing, just a part of episode 6 of the Sea Devils. This is how they originally appeared in the series.
We are driven from the human space. Many of my people have been killed.
It was a necessary sacrifice.
You said man was weak.
So he is. Soon you can surge from the seas in your millions and exterminate him.
Don't listen to him. Why begin a long and bloody war where thousands will be killed on both sides?
We shall destroy man and reclaim the planet.
Is there nothing I can say to make you reconsider?
Nothing.
So I think part of the question we're going to have tonight is, the legacy, the legend of Sea Devils. What about the legacy of Sea Devils? And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Right now, I'd like to introduce our panel who have been on with me a number of times before. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mike Rogers. And Mike has, takes part in Council Room every year. He is an avid scarf enthusiast, makes scarves. He's gone really, well, some might say overboard, and they would be correct. That would be an accurate statement. But, the thing is, though, is that Mike and I have been friends for so many years. And we were friends. We became friends shortly after Warriors of the Deep was broadcast. I mean, I think we met in 88 or 89, something like that. So, I mean, we've known each other for a while. And thank you so very much for joining in.
Absolutely. It's interesting. The abuse kind of started in at least 1990, I think, not from me, but from you towards me. And,
well.
And it's been a really one-sided relationship ever since then. So I'm very pleased to be here tonight.
This would be another accurate statement. Now, I'm also going to bring in Robert Franks. Robert has done a great deal for Doctor Who fandom over the years. And, especially back in the days of the Telesnap reconstruction, Nothing at the End of the Lane. It's always been, I've been honored to be both of your friends, to be perfectly honest, but with along with Robert, I've learned so much about the series and stuff. And I just wanted to welcome you to this panel as well.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you very much. And so, yeah, we got a lot of, we're getting comments in. Feel free to put in your comments about the story, put whatever else in, and we're trying to make a kind of a really overall look at stuff. And it is interesting, isn't it? I agree. It's a failure of judgment on my part. So first of all, before we get into the episode itself, let's take a look at the Radio Times. Okay, the Radio Times, the basically the TV guide in the UK that, there's two of them, Radio Times and TV Times. Radio Times used to be owned by the BBC. It's, hasn't been owned by the BBC since 2011. Or is it 2009? It might actually be 2009. And the thing is I'm always curious about how do they write up Doctor Who and how do they support it? So what we're going to look at here, first of all, they did a 4-page spread, really. And, this is basically a Chibnall interview, and we got some of the quotes in, leaked out, such as that he doesn't think anything that Russell will, and once he takes it on, he's probably going to ignore everything that Chibnall did. This is, it's a nice spread. It's interesting to hear from Chibnall because there's a lot there that he talks about. I'm not sure, let alone like how he's leaving and whatnot. I think it's a very interesting piece, and it's really interesting in my mind to you two that he talks a lot about kind of talking with Moffat about the workload and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting. As you all did too, apparently. Yeah. So
I got a sense from reading it that it sounds like things are pretty hectic in terms of just like the schedule and how rushed it sounded like it might have been. to get the whole thing penned and get into production. And, you think because they had a smaller season that, oh, this would be a piece of cake, but imagine COVID makes things a lot more complex.
I know from working production during COVID myself that it was so difficult, and so many players involved with trying to make sure that the protocols are met and how it was done and stuff. So yeah, I can't imagine how something like that was achieved all that well, to be honest. Did I cut you off, Robert?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was basically, producer speak. It was Chibnall,
Yeah,
doing what Moffat and Davies have done before him. So it was an interesting article. More about I think he's just similar to when both of them were ending their times on the show, saying like, yeah, it's been fun, but I'm happy to move on because it's too
get
much.
me out of here. Right?
Yeah.
Get me out of here. I don't even want to talk to you people at the Radio Times. And also for the Radio Times, of course, there was some nice pieces there that was really promoting the program. But what was not there was a cover. There was no cover for the Easter special. It was, in fact, a painting of Easter egg basket, which is kind of unfortunate, really. I mean, I get the holiday need and whatnot, but it is unfortunate because it is such a it really brings profile. And I know as far as programs go, and I didn't include the cover on this, but as far as programs go, Doctor Who is the only one mentioned on the Radio Times cover. So I don't know.
So it was a cover promo for the return of Don't Scare the Hare.
Right. That's right. Remember when after we watched it, I said, well, where is that? I mean, this is prime season for Don't Scare the Hare, and instead they put on Country File afterwards, and it was like the best of Country File. So it was, so Doctor Who at 50 and Beyond, who was kind enough to share a lot of this for me, so I appreciate it. Remember, they filmed this right after Flux series, as was next episode. Maybe there was a bit of a hurry up to keep Jodie's schedule a secret. That's very possible. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think, and we don't want to go down this rabbit hole too terribly much, I don't think, but I find that we really don't know, regardless of what they're telling us, we don't really know what was going on in these months where Chibnall is coming up to an end, and the decision to bring back Russell, and that could be a whole other topic altogether. But I really get the feeling that he's like, well, we always plan on staying 3 years. I don't remember there being a 3-year plan, but more of a 5-year plan. And maybe I'm just misremembering. I don't know. So why don't we? So I'm going to move on to ratings here real fast. I don't know if either of you saw ratings. Last night's Doctor Who Easter special had an overnight audience of 2.2 million, 11th most watched program of the day, was beaten by Antiques Roadshow on BBC Two, which was in fact a repeat at 2.26 million. For younger audience, was tough for Doctor Who, going against Britain's Got Talent, which won the night at 5.2 million. But then Elizo comes back and says, interestingly, the Doctor Who figures were pretty consistent throughout. There wasn't a drop off when Britain Got Talent started 20 minutes into the episode. So that's that's unfortunate. I mean, maybe people just weren't in a Doctor Who mood on Easter. I don't know what that's about.
Well, I don't know. I've realized that because people's viewing habits have changed significantly, you can't really go by the rating number itself, and you need to go by the position more so nowadays to kind of figure out like where it falls in the landscape. And 11th for the night isn't necessarily bad. Obviously we need to wait for the 7 days and the chart position for the week, but I would be interested, I suppose you don't know this, would be, how does the overnights rank with the overnights for Eve of the Daleks? Because Eve of the Daleks has been one of the consistently lowest placed Doctor Who since the return. I think it was still in the top 25 for the week overall, but that's fairly low position for Doctor Who.
Right.
Most of Jodie's era has stayed in the top 20, which again, I think that the BBC considers that. I think they consider anything that's in the top 30 to be they're doing their job well and entertaining the
Well,
masses.
I'd be
as opposed to.
I'd be interested to know if that, how true that is, because I don't know, and I know that it's amazing how people go, but I mean, it's what's really clear to me about this was that and Jeff comes in and he says it's 3.21 million for Eve of the Daleks. So and
For the overnight.
here we go. Honestly, Jason, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about these as facts. I mean, this is what it is. This is not us being, piling on the show. This is just the fact of what it is. We're going to get into the episode here shortly, but the thing is about that is what I think the good news that you could take from this is that there are programs, if the BBC doesn't think these programs are worth it, they'll axe it. That's not the case with Doctor Who. So, as much as we might be saying, well, it seems to be lower and it's those are facts, but I think the fact also is that the BBC does not want to get rid of Doctor Who. They see it for what it is. They for once, which they didn't see in 1989, they see the global view of Doctor Who. And that, because they work closer with the commercial arm than they ever have in the past.
I don't know that and definitely they do that, but also the fact that, when you look at, EastEnders still being, a number one show, and its ratings, there's not getting 13 million like they were over a decade ago. They're only getting maybe 7 or 8 million. All the shows have dropped consistently because there's so much more people that have moved over to streaming and aren't watching necessarily live the day of. That's why I said I generally go by more of what the chart positions are for the shows to kind of understand whether it's still in the, whether it's still performing well against other shows.
And I think that's fair, but I also think that it also needs to be recognized that the reason why there are charts anyway is because it sets advertising rates. And you might be like, well, the BBC doesn't have advertising rates, but ITV does. So you got, those are things that are necessary in the bigger picture. And yes, there are streaming, obviously that's a big part of it, but I think there is some of that is, these ratings still mean something.
I know that the ratings do still mean something, but it's similar here in the US, where rating numbers have dropped off significantly from what they were before too. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because shows are getting lower ratings, doesn't mean that they're getting lower advertising dollars, because the ratings that they're getting now are being used as to set the advertising rates, as you say. Well, so similar in the UK, it would be the same, because all of the numbers across all the shows have dropped. The advertising rates haven't dropped.
You know that for a fact? I'm not trying to be a jerk.
I don't know. I don't know about the advertising rates.
Because when I worked in advertising, that was a factor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just trying to put some, context to it. It's all.
No, all I'm saying is that if all the show's ratings drop, then you have to use those ratings to make a new chart of what the advertising rates should be when you talk about advertising rates. But if you're trying to say, okay, we should be basing all of the advertising rates against, the final episode of MASH, then it becomes kind of like, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to move on. There is a very unscientific Twitter poll that I did this week, as you can see by the sheer thousands of people who took part in it. 170 votes, and I was just curious what the people's barometer was. The people, basically, I was just curious to see the folks that see my Twitter feed, what they thought of it. Obviously, 170 people out of 8 billion in the world isn't exactly the most scientific thing, but I find it very interesting that where we're at, basically the all right status here is pretty much what I've seen across the board in general sort of polls. Once again, none of these polls are scientific, but I find it very interesting. So as we get into this, let's see here. Bill says, I think the ratings mean less than ever now. Chibnall and Jody have already quit, and RTD is on the way. I think there's some validity to that, Bill, in the sense that we know that Doctor Who is coming back. We know that there is a future for Doctor Who, which we'll get in. I mean, we're going to get into. I mean, we all know what the future is. It's not like we're holding back information, but I think that that is absolutely a good point to that as well. That you just, it's the future is secure. The future is secure, and that was kind of what I was trying to say. That yeah, the ratings don't look good, but we know that their BBC is not giving up on Doctor Who. So. So why don't we talk a little bit about just overall feelings? Reason why I brought these two gentlemen on, because I value their opinion. I love watching Doctor Who with them, and I'd love to know what you all thought of the story. First of all, let's just do an overall, okay? Let's just kind of do an overall first, not even a first impression, but where you landed by the time you got to this. So Mike, I'd like to start with you. What do you think? What do you think of Legends of the Sea Devils?
I was one of those Twitter followers that clicked all right. And I'm fairly pro Chibnall era. I think there are quite a few episodes that I rank quite high for me personally. And so it's not like I've got an axe to grind or anything like that. But even at the end, because my daughters and I were watching it together, and yeah, that was kind of all of our consensus of, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't a home run. It wasn't spectacular. It wasn't awful, but yeah, it was just very, and we can get into more of the specifics too. But that's just my overall impression after just the first viewing.
And that's right, because you've seen it just the one time so far.
One time, yeah.
Okay. And Robert, what do you think? Where did you land with this?
Well, again, on the first viewing, it was more all right. I had a hard time following some of it, and I think we discussed this at the time, Greg. And you brought up that it might have been more to do with the mix. I mean, generally, you and I watch so much British television, we don't have a hard time hearing the dialogue and understanding the dialogue. But a lot of this, and I don't recall ever having an issue in the past with any of Jodie's episodes, but a lot of this, I was straining to make out what they were saying. And I don't think it was the fact that, it was their accents. It was more to do with, like you said, the mix, the audio mix on the episode itself. And so I went back and watched it a second time to try and pick up on that viewing, which I have to say, this is probably only the second Jodie episode I've watched more than once. But it got a little better because I could pick up on the strands of the plot that I had missed the first time through, and some of the explanations for things that I thought were missing that were actually there. So yeah, it's still, I don't think it's ever going to rank as a truly classic story for me, but it's an enjoyable one. I enjoyed it a lot more than some of the Jodie's first series, but then again, I also enjoy it probably a lot more than some of the Capaldi episodes I saw too.
It's interesting you mentioned that audio part, Robert, because I felt the same way in this episode, and to an extent in the Flux season as well, just struggling to understand with the sound mix, and so when I finally got it on Blu-ray, it was wonderful to be able to put on subtitles and figure out what was some of the dialogue that I missed the first couple times around. So it's not just you. I feel the same way.
I've had a hard time, and when I did my rewatch, and I did it from, I got the episode from Amazon Prime, and I rewatched it, and what I found was I was having a hard time understanding Dan, and what was interesting about it, though, I'm conflicted by even saying that as something that bothers me, because there is always that idea of the BBC proper English that comes through, but this is truly a Liverpudlian accent, and I do enjoy that. But there are times, and I have a hard time understanding Jodie as well, and I'm thinking to myself, am I am I just aging over here that I can't hear anybody anymore? But like it took me the trailer when actually it wasn't even Jody, it was Yaz, who's just like, paraphrasing, sometimes you act like a kid. And it took me a long time to pick that up. I didn't know what she said. So that was really difficult for me. Now, the Brain of Morbius says, I find it difficult. You find stuff difficult. I find it difficult to read, apparently. I find the dialogue very difficult to hear, too, but I put that down to me getting on a bit and my hearing not being what it used to be. Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. But, and my thoughts on the story itself was that, I love the fact they went big with the story. I love the fact that it was in a part of the world that is really intriguing to me, that they really did a lot of work in to make it look like from that place, from that era, that the Doctor and companions, they all dressed appropriately. There was, some of that stuff was beautiful. But
did Dan dress appropriately? Wasn't that the whole point?
Fair point, really. But
constantly kept coming up again and again in the episode.
But the problem for me was, and I think because like Bill talks about it here, he had a problem following what was going on, and I think there's more to it. Personally, in my opinion, there's more to it than the dialogue for that. But I mean, I thought the scope of the story was too big for the production team. It felt like that they were doing a good job with it, but there was some stuff that really let it down for me on the production side and the editing side. Let me ask you both something, because maybe and Mike, you pay attention to things more than I do. Was this supposed to be a 60-minute plus episode? Because I thought it was supposed to be longer, and to find out is still running in at 15 or 15:50. It's like they really needed just a little bit more to connect, in my opinion, to connect some scenes together to make it make more sense. Right. And have either of you heard that it was supposed to be longer and they cut it down?
I vaguely recall, but I'm not 100% certain. So, how the memory does cheat. But I thought, right, that I had read that this was going to be more of a full length 60-minute type thing. And I felt very much the same way too. It felt very Ghostlightish in that it was just too much crammed into too short a space. And again, I don't know if I attribute that to, again, my age, because I feel like a lot of modern day television goes at a breakneck speed.
But I think I said this to you, Greg, but it was a great Easter omnibus of a 6-episode story. For the first, it's kind of like the complaint you got back in the day was that all 6-episode stories were too long, but this one really needed, and it needed I think it could have done with a whole other extra half an hour, I think, to let it breathe and let it not feel so frenetic. An extra 10 minutes would have been good, just to kind of fit in more of the explanations that needed to happen that were being thrown. And again, on the second watching, I caught things that they were explaining that I hadn't caught the first time. So it's there, but it's not, not all of it's there. And anyway, like I said, it just would have been a lot better to have a little bit more time, especially because they wanted to fit in the character moments of Yaz and the Doctor at the end. So the story has to come to an end for the adventure, and then they want to still have the character moments, and to let those character moments breathe and maybe have more of them throughout the episode. They need to have a bit more, change the pacing of the episode just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So going to the comments, Jeff has said, I did hear there was some pretty last minute editing on the story that was going to be 60 minutes until close to when it aired. To me, and I say this as somebody who is a post-production producer, not that anyone else can do this, because we all have our eyes, we all see what we saw on the air, but as an editor and taking note of the edits in a program, this looked frantic. This looked like that they were running out of time. whether Jeff is correct or not, who knows? But also, I want to quickly go to my personal profile page because the comments don't come on here. Talking about the mix, Linda had said, "I don't get why these characters were whispering to begin with from the first episode," and there is some of that. Going more to the comments, and first of all, everyone, thank you so much for the comments. I really do appreciate it. This really helps enrich the discussion here. The Brain of Morbius. Robin Bland says, anything else would, though, in that comparison, and I'm assuming what saying about how you're saying, if you just had 10 more minutes, but I do feel like this is different in this situation. I do agree that, yeah, anything, if you give it more time, is going to be able to be more, but I really think this story took some liberties, and if I may, I think, like, when I watched, and this isn't a big deal, but it really annoyed me all the same, was that whole contrivance of when they first ran into that head sea devil, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, he's standing on the net, and the net just pulls him up out of nowhere. Like, they've been there for a second, and they created this plan. That was like, sure, it looked great, in a sense, but it also looked very rushed, and it didn't make sense to me. And that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking of when you say that, Robert.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Mike.
go ahead. Oh, if they had, because that was the moment when I did roll my eyes early in the episode, going, "What the heck did I just see?" And I mean, if that was pared down in order to still capture the moment when the Sea Devil's in the net, just cut out the whole bit, because it added no value to the story, and it was so silly that he would just happen to be standing right there, and they all happened to have their hands on a rope, and they all knew to pull.
On the second watch through, I did notice it felt that there was some back and forth between the Chief Sea Devil and Jodie a bit. That was, I felt that, oh, this is what she's trying to maneuver him into this net that must have been there and must have already been attached to a pulley, and all of this is all set up. So they noticed it, so I noticed that there was some footwork to try and maneuver the Sea Devil, but like you said, there's nothing to be like, a sly look to the companions to say, "Hey, do you see that net? Like, let's set him up." So, and why wasn't Linus there to deal with the Sea Devil?
This is kind of a lazy devil, is what we call this one. He's sleeps most of the time. He's in a prime position to scratch my face off, so I was smart to pick him up this way. Anyone who watches my paranormal live streams will see that he's my co-host, and there we go. God, you're heavy and fat, just like his owner. So
you didn't tape him to the wall this time?
I didn't what?
You did not tape him
to the wall. Oh yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I agree with that, Robert, totally. I just, and there was some other, like, some of the action sequences at the end of the story. First of all, going from the Sea Devil ship or the ship that they took over, the Doctor and Yaz coming over to what's her name's ship? I don't even remember. Madam Ching. That's right. Thank you. And that was just like, how did they get from the floor below to the top and then swing over? It's just that sort of thing. And here I am. I'm the one who can take a lot. I think, like with Flux, I can take a lot of, like, the quick moving, but for some reason, maybe because I really wanted this to be perfect. This is the first story in a long time that I was like, yeah, I really want this to be good. And right away, some of that stuff, in my opinion, let that down.
I think that was there because they were doing a pirate pastiche, and they needed to fit. They wanted to fit certain things in, not that they needed to.
Sure.
But it literally was, yes. When on the rewatch, it was like, because I think they expect that the audience just isn't going to pay attention because they're used to pirate movies, and from pirate movies they swing across from one ship to another. However, if you go back and you watch that, Jodie and Yaz, when they swing in, the ropes are pointing straight up, literally straight up, like the Sea Devil ship is right above them. It's like No, because then in the next shot, you see that the Sea Devil ship is actually really far away over the bow.
I think the one that I'm embarrassed that I didn't think about until you mentioned it, Robert. Do you know what I'm talking about? The one that really stuck out after you mentioned it during broadcast.
I don't know which one you're talking about specifically.
Let me tell you. It was when Dan and the other. I'm horrible with character names.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so what is it? Tell us what it is, because this is fantastic.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember. Ying Kai is the young gentleman's name. So Dan and Ying Kai are Madame Ching finds her on her ship, and literally in the next shot you see there's no crew. Literally the next shot they're strung up by their feet. So obviously she must have had a conversation where she said, okay, you sit still while I tie him up and pull him up by his feet. Don't come up and stop me when I'm putting this rope around his feet and yanking it up. No, don't do anything. One of you has to sit still while I do this. So it's kind of like, okay, how did that happen?
That is so funny. I felt stupid actually, because I didn't think about that. And then you said it during the episode. And I'm just like, you are right. How did that happen? Here's the thing, right? I mean, and I think, okay, so Brandon Morbius writes, and I think he's talking about the Silurian thing. That didn't bother me too much. Maybe a directorial choice to make the temporary capture of the Sea Devil a bit more of a surprise moment. And I buy that. I get that. And I understand that this is a swashbuckling story. It's meant to be action-packed. And I get that that's what's happening. And I appreciate that comment. I personally just feel like that it doesn't take much to just sort of put it together a little bit more coherently. And I also understand too, some of this stuff is meant to be fun, right? I mean, I get the idea of them being upside down is meant to be a fun moment that, they're like, leave it, Dan's basically saying, leave it to me. And next thing you know, they're upside down. I get that. But these are just things that are just like, I just wish people would think it through a little bit more before they put it on screen.
There were a couple more that I noticed the second time around. For instance, at the very beginning, there's actually all of the shots after we come back from the credits. First, before the credits, we have a Sea Devil who's holding a human in his hand. He is literally trapped inside this statue that he breaks out of. But why is this Sea Devil statue 3 times bigger than the actual Sea Devil himself if he's literally frozen inside that statue? Maybe the entire statue, he isn't in the entire statue. Maybe he's only in part of it. Because if the human was frozen with him, wouldn't that human have come back to life too? Anyway.
So this is going to be the sad point of the broadcast tonight is there's a lot of stuff I don't understand about this story that it's going to make me sound pretty silly. And, I'm going to have to rely on you two and the folks out there to help me with it. And now Brandon Morbius asks, was it a child the statue was holding?
It did not seem to be a child. It seemed to be a full-grown man. I thought that same thing too, and I went back and looked at it closer, and it doesn't appear to be a child. But again, still the Sea Devil, the statue, you can see the statue is much, much bigger. I mean, even if it's a child, it would have to literally be a baby to be that size, and then it just wouldn't work at all.
And we have Sea Devil action figures from Character Options. Perhaps the Sea Devil had a human action figure that he got frozen with at that point. So maybe that's where the scale comes in.
And like I said, if the human had been frozen with him, even if it had been a child, why didn't the human become unfrozen when he did? I'm willing to look past that because it's not that big of a deal. I don't need to be that pedantic about it. But then after we come back from the credits, you see a scene of the Chief Sea Devil, because that's his name in the credits, Chief Sea Devil. You see him slaughtering the village people. and it's pouring rain.
Not the village people, but the people of the village. Let's be clear about that. The village people are all right, folks. I know
Yes.
they're performing this weekend in Vegas. Don't worry, folks. They're all
I
right.
swear I thought I saw somebody in a biker outfit. That he was slaying. But the people of the village, he's slaying, and it's pouring down rain. And then literally right after that, because we've seen the doctor and her team on the beach and it's not raining, although we can see rain in the background. So that's fine because it could be raining in the village and not on the beach. But they run up and all of a sudden the rain has stopped. The Sea Devil isn't wet. They're not wet from having run up. And literally when we cut to Madam Ching on the ground isn't wet.
Yes.
It was
Yes,
literally just raining in the village. So
Yeah.
it's a little inconsistent. But
it bothered
they wanted
me
the
too.
shot to look good with the rain, and it did, so that's fine.
Yeah, I wondered about that too, and then I was wondering, does it have to rain to be around sea devils? I mean, because it seems like that their powers had been kind of reassessed since we saw them previously. And the one thing that you had brought up, Robert, prior to this broadcast, which I really did not pick up on, was the purpose of the keystone.
Well, yeah, and again, I didn't pick up on that at the first viewing, but the keystone and its Jihan says that the keystone has the ability to freeze time, which is, I guess, explains why he's still alive 274 years later, because that was missing also. But it also can teleport and transport things, and Jody immediately notices and says, Sea Devil technology. So it was stolen from the Sea Devils and was part of this treasure, and the Sea Devils were trying to get it back, which is interesting because before they get it back, they exhibit that the actual functions that they see that they say that the keystone can do. In other words, they've already frozen Jai-Hun in time for 274 years. The Sea Devil, the chief Sea Devil, teleports around in that mist an awful lot before they get the keystone back. So it's kind of like, why do they need the keystone if their technology already does this and they've been doing it? It's just, maybe it's like they don't have the technology to fully reverse the polarity without it or something. Again, it's kind of like, so they show they have this technology, and obviously they state outright, Jody states that the keystone is Sea Devil technology. So they need it back so they can do bigger teleporting, bigger freezing of time. I don't know.
Well, maybe just to keep it out of the hands of, the primitive apes that occupy the surface now.
Land parasites.
Land parasites, yes.
Which, to be honest, while we're on that real quick, I thought that was kind of humorous that, Chibnall didn't want to get into the whole thing that they're not really sea devils, and she calls them sea devils. That's the human's name for them, and she calls them that time and time again. And so the sea devil, the chief sea devil, because he doesn't get to have a name because he's not important enough, he immediately thinks that she's bad mouthing him, so he has to bad mouth her and call her a land parasite. So
right,
they're just treating jabs.
Now Jeff says that the keystone situation to him is a perfect example of issues with editing. The reasons for existence were mostly there, but it didn't all make sense. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's possible. I mean, I agree with that, but I also don't want to just be piling onto the episode. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that I felt like I was missing on there too, because I mean, you picked it up, Robert. It was in there.
Yes. But I had to go back and specifically again watch with subtitles to pick up on the explanation and go they're because it's really hard because he's barely speaking because apparently he's Jai-Hun has just woken up, and so he's whispering himself and he's explaining what the keystone can do. And now I wish also the keystone that we had that we had seen it instead of the Ying Kai having it under his shirt, it had been out so that we could have noticed, oh, hey, there was an orange stone. So when it gets mentioned at some point, the audience could have go like, oh, hey, we know who has that.
Mhm.
Instead, it's kind of like there's no way we would have known where it was. Nobody would have, because it just starts glowing under his shirt as soon as
Right.
Jae-hoon mentions that that's
It-
what it does.
It really would have been nice if someone would have said, that was the keystone all the time. That would have been really nice. Now, let's see. Doctor Who, 50 and Beyond says they wanted their crap back. That's fair enough. Bill asked, do the Sea Devils have this technology in other episodes? Not that we could see. But my favorite, Brandon Morbius, says that where did the crystal come from? Was it Sea Devil tech? If so, why didn't they just make another one? I mean, if it's something, I mean, because it doesn't sound like it's a mystical thing, like it was like some sort of like religious relic or something like that. That this is like just something that they have.
Jodie literally says Sea Devil technology.
Yeah.
So that's, as soon as like he describes it to her, that's what she says. So it is their technology, and obviously that they've been exhibiting this same technology throughout the rest of the episode by by freezing him and that by teleporting the Chief Sea Devil around. The only thing that really wasn't explained, because we do see him teleport, I thought, after years of seeing kind of like Star Trek style like lights for teleportation, having the teleportation be in a mist was an interesting take for a special effect. The Sea Devil being able to jump from the land all the way up onto the surface of the ship, which was far away, it's kind of like, like in one giant leap. Yeah, okay.
Yep, that one stretched my credulity too. And also, and I liken this to a Space 1999 issue for me. And we've talked about.
I did not expect to hear that tonight. I honestly, I really did not expect to hear a Jerry Anderson program brought into this.
So one of the things that irks me about Space 1999 when I watch it is just how weird the science is. Like it's not really grounded very much in science. And when I was telling this to Robert,
tell me more.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to. So I was telling Robert this. He's like, but Mike, you see way more like crazy things like in Doctor Who. And I'm like, yeah, I accept it there, but I don't accept it here. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, it's because it's Space 1999 and it's supposed to be a few decades in the future kind of a thing. And so
in the past now.
Yes. So
that's right.
But one of the things that kind of irked me this time, because I'm usually very forgiving about sciencey things in Doctor Who because it's more fantasy, was just this whole notion of changing the Earth's magnetic field, which, okay, but then that actually wouldn't cause stars to move in the sky. And so that, unless I just totally missed the mark on what they were trying to say, to me, that was just like, whoa.
Well, Mr. Science Teacher, I was just going to ask you about that. Like how does changing the geomagnetic poles have anything to do with affecting the magnet, a stone magnetically?
Yeah,
because they were skipping stones, and the stones were being pulled back by geomagnetic force. But they're stones; they're not metal.
Yeah.
How are they being affected by magnetism?
Yeah, no, that the whole geomagnetic reversal thing didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Well,
as a method of wiping out humans or any of those things.
But the poles have changed. I don't know that. I mean, our poles have changed before, so it is a thing that can happen. But like the way that they were describing it, not necessarily accurate.
Yeah,
and it's not going to switch from north to south and south to north because, well, then it's kind of the same.
Well, and so the Earth naturally does that from time to time. It switches, the poles switch. And for some indeterminate amount of time, we're without a magnetic field, or it's a very chaotic magnetic field. But all that really translates into is some additional solar radiation that reaches us. But it's not, generally, I don't think at least, is not something that we attribute to wild catastrophes and mass extinctions and things of that order.
As if the moon were pulled out of the orbit of Earth, and what would happen to like life on Earth with no tides and things like that? Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Well, luckily the moon is its own spaceship.
Yeah,
that can travel on its own.
crossing millions or thousands and thousands of light years in just a matter of a few weeks.
Just very quickly, and it looks great in HD.
Yes,
So,
it does. It actually, the show in Space 1999 looks brilliant. The science fiction part of it is
Eric
not.
Meddings. Okay, so we got that. We got a number thing, and I want to go back to a comment that Bill had said, and a comment Bill had said. So so Bill says, "Why bring back the Sea Devils if there's nothing about what happens in the story that has anything to do with the Sea Devils?"
Well, and honestly, I think I saw another comment where someone on Twitter or something said, "Oh, they should have played it up like previous Sea Devil and Silurian stories, like the Doctor should have been there to try to make peace." And I felt like, well, that's just the same story over and over and over again. So I actually appreciated the fact that the Sea Devils wanted to wipe out humans, but at least it wasn't with the Doctor trying to get us to see their perspective and
I suppose, but let me challenge you with this, Mike, and I got to put this up because we all thought the moon was an egg, with people from Mexico on the moon station with their sombreros. They brought the sombreros to their space station. So that was something that actually did disappoint me, because we have gone so far with the idea that not everybody who is, first of all, as far as I look at the Jodie era, it's about equality almost more than any other era in Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you have to have villains in Doctor Who. You really should. But the idea that you have the Sea Devils now who were aggressive in this, obviously we don't look at it as the entirety of the Sea Devil race, but at the same time, it was, I guess I was disappointed that they just were presented to me as a there we are.
Okay. You like leaving us on a cliffhanger there.
Right. Did you hear my whole question that I'm demanding you to answer? Okay. So the idea, because I saw that it was spinning on my end, and I just thought it was from what I was drinking.
No, when I said no, that was just my answer, Greg. My answer is no.
Your answer is no. About the idea that the whole Jodie era has been one of just equality. We have this with the Sea Devils so far, that I guess I was disappointed to see that it was just another monster trying to ruin the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that ruin. That is the same thing with Silurians and Sea Devils in every story. They want to take back the planet for themselves.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with Mike that I'm just happy that this time they weren't. It wasn't the same old.
Maybe you're the monster.
The doctor trying to mediate between the two. But the concern here is the mediate between the Sea Devils and the three humans that are there. It's it's the cast is incredibly small. Even I noticed that in the credits, even though he had a speaking role, the second in command from Jai Hung's ship, Lee Bone, he says something very briefly, but he doesn't get a credit. He doesn't get mentioned an acting credit at the end of the episode. And the father does, luckily, but I guess you have to die. Well, yeah, I suppose Lee Bond didn't die; he made it to shore. So, but anyway.
Hey, so one really neat shout out that I liked, and it was subtle enough that I didn't feel like it was over the top. I just liked the necklace translator thing that they did with the Sea Devils.
Oh, you like that?
It wasn't a translator.
Oh, well, I took it as such, so that's why we didn't see their mouths moving in sync with their voices. It was like translating their voices. To me, that like harkened back to 1972, and it's like, okay, it's not a dude in a rubber mask. It's just, you know, the way they're translating.
And when we saw the clip earlier on, it's obvious their mouths did move a lot more. But it's never mentioned that it's a translator. It literally is just there to like flash like the lights of the Silurians in Warriors of the Deep.
Right.
To show like, oh, hey, I'm the one that's talking. Well, none of the others talk ever, so it doesn't really matter in this. If you're going to make it Sea Devils, there were two things that, especially since it's Chibnall who loves his continuity stuff, you know, it would have been interesting to have a second. Well, this would have been interesting in general. But rather than just having the chief Sea Devil, he has all these other minions, but maybe he should have like one other one that he can talk to, and that you know, a second in command. And it would have necessarily kind of been like neat if that second in command had been named Savix. But because we never find out that Savix knew who the Doctor was. But the other thing that I thought that they should have kind of said, it would have been nice, the giant sea creature, the Hao Shen. Why couldn't there have just been a simple line that said, like from Jodie said, "Oh, that's what a fully grown Merca looks like." You know, it's like, okay, we saw a baby Merca. That's why it looks like it's a pantomime horse.
That's what a fully grown Ingrid Pitt looks like. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
she could grow more.
It's funny that the comic came out. Can we talk about the fact that the Sea Devils has a huge, amazing sea monster, and it isn't the Merca? Can I be honest? And this is where you all are going to be like, this guy is an idiot. Which you've already come to before, so I'm going to beat Mike to that. But the idea that the TARDIS, does it get swallowed by this? How does it get swallowed? They're in there, and next thing they know, they're back in the 1800s. I missed all of this both times I watched it.
It gets bitten. It doesn't get swallowed. Bitten,
it just gets captured in its teeth. Once bitten, twice shy.
Pulled down to their HQ below, and then it spits it out, and some Sea Devils must move it in to the because then they're in the this chief Sea Devils HQ. Somebody had to have carried it in there because there's no obvious water around.
This is how stupid I am. I was wondering if their base was in this stupid fish. I mean, I was just really confused by the whole thing.
Maybe it is.
And you know, Jeff, you know, whatever, Jeff. So
and that was not the blowhole they escaped out of.
Yeah, that's are we still talking about Doctor Who, Jeff? Anyway, so
the Hugh Shen spits, not swallows. We haven't even got to Madame Ting's history yet.
So the seafloor disappears when the sea monster appears and then pulls the TARDIS down. I get that part of it. I truly do. But that's still in the 1500s, or were they back in the 1800s by that point?
They had gone back to 1807, yes.
Some of you are like, did this guy even watch the episode?
Exactly, Greg. Watch the damn episode, and then you know these things.
That's what I should have done. I was actually watching the newest episode of Call the Midwife, and I thought that would be good enough to run this thing from. So
that's set in the 1500s, right?
And it felt like it, yeah. So, and then Bill had a fair question. Robert, are you watching at half speed? How are you following all of this? And I have to admit, I mean, Bill is absolutely right on this because, and I don't want it to be like, oh my gosh, I'm ripping on the show. I am truly confused by some of these moments in the story.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a fair critique. Seriously, yeah. That's what left me at kind of an overall rating for it, because it did feel very confused, and I'm learning more about just the episode talking to you guys than watching it even a second time.
Talking to Robert. I mean, honestly, I'm not adding to this one bit.
The bit that you were just talking about with the creature, the Hyoshen, pulling them down, I got from the first viewing, but there are parts that I picked up, and I did also look into the very deeply into the history. And Madame Ching is a historical character. Mm-hmm. She did exist. And it's kind of remarkable. She was a pirate queen. She had married a pirate. Well, she's called Madam Ching because she literally was a madam of a floating brothel before she married her husband, who created a confederation. The two of them together created this confederation when they were married in 1801 between all of the pirates in the South China Sea. So it's kind of she is a remarkable character. This story is set in 1807, though, where she gave birth to her second son in 1807. Not sure exactly when, but she must have given birth to not too long before this episode. And in the story, she says that her sons are 3 and 6, and they're not. Her first son is 4, and the second one is literally only a few months old. Her husband dies in November of 1987, the real life historical Madam Ching. And that's coming up because literally going by where they're in 1533, and when they get back, they say that it's 274 days, it's 274 years, 4 months, and 2 days later. So that means that this story can take place no later than August 29th, 1807. So it's it is before her husband's death. Interestingly enough, there are stories either her husband fell overboard or was murdered by her, and immediately afterward she shacked up with her adopted son, who was 24.
Spaghettios.
Would that be the guy from the village then?
No.
See, that's what I thought.
No, because her adopted son was her and her husband had adopted this son. He actually had stolen this kid when he was 15 in 1798, and so then when they got married, they literally adopted him so he would become his heir. And the two of them went on to have basically do more with this pirate confederation before they in 1810 they willingly gave themselves up for pardons. But she was a very interesting character that they brought together here. And in 1807, she would have been 32 years old, and this adopted son would have been 24.
I will always think that the adopted son was the one in the episode. You cannot convince me otherwise. It's impossible now. And but wow.
Apparently that was the one who was playing Yin Kai. This is his first legitimate acting role.
Cool.
He was very. I saw that earlier, and I was checking his Twitter. He was very excited to have been in Doctor Who.
So, Bill says that you obviously wrote Legend of the Sea Devil.
I would have
because there's a lot that's left out on it that Robert would have insisted be put back in. And here's a comment from Jim on my personal profile page. He said it was painful, lazy writing, and I always appreciate what Jim has to say, but I don't know if I would agree with that, to be very honest, because I really do feel strongly that we don't get to see what the episode was supposed to look like, because I really do, without any sort of proof, I'm going to be honest about that, but I really feel like that it was edited very poorly.
Well, and it might be wishful thinking on my part, but I don't consider Chibnall to just be phoning it in, like lazy. That you might want to criticize it in a different way, but to me, saying that it was just lazily written, I don't know that I would agree with that.
Yeah,
right. I don't think that it's lazy writing necessarily, but there have been oftentimes when I've read scripts, a script I think come across as really, really good. When I read the script for Listen leaked by Miguel Caseo or whatever his name was at the time.
So
I thought this was going to be a really great episode, and then I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, something happened between script and production." So sometimes in the script that it seems like these things are coming together, and until you get both the actors and the directors, and then into the editing, and it might lose something. But I think that there was a lot in there. I mean, there were like things, again, getting back to the history aspect, the fact that, Dan brings this up, that the treasure of the Flora del Mar was lost at sea at the coast of Sumatra. No, in the Indian Ocean, nowhere near the South China Sea.
Yeah.
So they bring that up, and they give a reason for that. That Ji Han has found it and in 1533 and brought it to the South China Sea. But
why would
so there's little bits where he tries to explain, okay, this isn't going to make any sense, but I'm going to do it anyway.
But why would Dan of all people know that? Like, to me, that was like, oh, like that would have made more sense coming from the Doctor than from a companion.
So you're saying people from Liverpool are stupid, Mike? Is that what you're saying?
Have we ever found out what Dan's
Ever heard of the
actual
Beatles?
job was? Because when we first meet him, he's telling people about the history of Liverpool.
Mhm.
Maybe he's a history professor that has specialized in like ancient China and Liverpool.
Yeah.
He was talking about it and not being paid. He wasn't officially even part like an employee. So I mean, he must love he must love history. I mean, so okay, so why don't we move on? First of all, thank you for that history, because I didn't even know, quite frankly, that she was real or any of them were real.
Ji Han is made up. The one from the 1533.
Well, and I, not to go out down a rabbit hole, but this is actually one of the aspects of the Chibnall era that I've always enjoyed, is some of the more what I would call obscure to me, like historical figures that are kind of brought out and given like a place to shine in a story. So to me, like hearing Robert describe all those pieces was like really interesting, and one of the things that I actually enjoy about the Chibnall era.
It's now the thing that I found interesting, because I agree with that. He brought up, he introduced us to several along the way. There are several female characters that he's introduced us to, and they're usually always female characters that history has kind of left behind. But it was interesting because, Madame Ching, she is an interesting character, but literally most of the things that were done that, like this confederation of pirates was done by her husband. Well, it's done by her and her husband together, but it was literally, it's her husband that kind of like, it was one that started this, but, she obviously was there at the same time too. We don't know how much involvement she may have had in that or that. So it's just kind of like some of the other ones, like I can't remember the characters' names that we met, the one in Paris.
For
with the master and some other ones that were helping her. I don't know if some of the histories have been conflated to make them a little more conveniently like better characters than what they were in real life, but
probably no more so than any other historical figure that they ever bring up in any kind of fiction. Really, you got to bend it a little bit to make the story more interesting too.
Well, and that's, like I said, they bent the Madame Ching's story as well here. So,
well, and I think more of her history would have been interesting. Like pull out some of the sea devilishness and put more of her story in there would be pretty fascinating.
I don't know if some of that would have been pre-watershed.
So change the name to the Legend of Madame Ching instead of Legend of Sea Devils. Okay, duly noted. So a couple other things that I want to get to before we talk about that coming soon trailer. There's the, what did you all think of like the production quality of the episode, Mike?
Oh gosh, I'm out of the three of us, I'm the least informed opinion, right? Because I'm just a casual viewer. I don't like have the kind of like experiences like you do, for example, Greg, in production. But for me, it looked visually very interesting. So I got no beef there. I think for me, it was mostly just story that kind of left me a bit cold.
You you were correct to think that your opinion matters less because I was in production and you're not. But I'm actually kidding, obviously, because I always hear people in the industry when I was working in production being like, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. But at the end of the day, it needs to come from the person, the viewers who are watching it. So if you don't notice anything, if you think it all looks good, then they succeeded. At the end, I mean, that's really all that matters.
Yeah. No, I never at any point said, oh, they're in some bay in Cardiff filming this, So no, I think overall visually it looked really good. Some of the things that Robert brought out kind of stuck in my mind too, just the weirdness of, is it raining or is it not raining? Why is it raining here but not there? The swinging of the ship. So there were a few things here and there visually that didn't quite jive, didn't quite work. But as we've been saying, that's probably more down to perhaps editing than the actual production side of it, where they're trying to do the special effects and filming. But no, and considering that it was done under COVID lockdown situations, yeah, I think it doesn't look like it has been impacted by a global pandemic.
I think it does.
Ooh, well, like let's hear it.
And mostly in the size of the cast.
Oh yeah, I think that's
and obviously that may not necessarily feel like that 10 years from now, because people will just be, it had a small cast. We see that because we're seeing that in so many shows now, where not only do they have it's small cast, but like usually it's like smaller groups. So when you have a larger cast, you break them into smaller groups to keep the social distancing and whatnot. But it just felt like this cast was way, way too small for the type of, it's a big grand adventure. And it's like, they make a note of it. Like, literally, how did she steer her ship there with no crew at all? A smaller ship maybe, but that's a huge ship. And I see her tying the ship's wheel at one point, but still, that only helps so much. It's like there's a lot that would have to have happened to get the ship there. So
this is like Star Trek 3. We just didn't see her version of Scotty. He was down somewhere in the bowels of the ship, stroking the engines and getting this whole thing to work for his captain. We just got to believe.
Yeah. And the production levels, they always look great. And these new cameras they've been using since Jodie has taken over, everything really looks very, very nice. So I would never really question the production levels, but I think I said this to you, Greg, at the time. When you switch from the beach and the first time they're on Madame Ching's ship, I'm like, this looks like a set. This looks like classic Doctor Who set. It's a set with not even like a set with like green screen background. It's a set with like drapes in the background, the painting. It's like, it's not even like a really good set. It's just a set.
If the Sea Devils aren't there, it's sunset the entire time. It's like this pink hue over them, orange hue.
Because you see the stars moving, and it's like, okay, everything's kind of pinkish, and I'm like, okay. And then when they get back up, because when the Doctor rises the ship and they swing over, now it's daytime. It's literally morning. So it's like, so was that like night when the stars were moving? Because it'd have to be at some point twilight or very early dawn or something, but there was never any night. It was always kind of like, okay, very interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, I did you hear a big crash? That was my cat that took down part of my house. So just wondering if anyone else heard that, or if that's just
I felt it.
Yeah, I bet you did. And I just saw this animal run, and then a big crash happen, and now he's back, because I don't think he's done destroying things. I think he is not quite done yet with destroying this live feed as well as my house. So, I
wanted to say, like, because it not only did it feel like a set, it's the very first time I think in modern Doctor Who that it really felt to me like a set. It just really felt like, okay, something's just not feeling right with this. Because I said it to you at the time when we were watching it, Greg. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, if they weren't filmizing it, making it progressive and all that, it would probably look a lot worse. But
yeah, anyway. No, I mean, I mean, for me, I thought that once again, I love where their heart was with this. I love the fact that it was a very epic adventure, trying to do their best. But I knew from the one of the very first scenes when the statue started to crack, and you see the cracks in the statue, and when the camera pans up, the cracks are panning up slightly with it, and I thought, oh geez, this is not going to be good. I mean, you just see that it was just in my opinion, it was just a little too much for them to take on, let alone the edit and stuff. But they're like the Sea Devil jumping from land to their ship and stuff. I was just like, that just doesn't look good. And part of me wonders, is that because in my mind, I don't think that that's possible anyway, because I think there's a difference between like my mind just doesn't think that to be possible, or is it just not a good effect?
A little bit of both, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about that because these are creatures that have, live for the most part under the sea.
Yeah.
Under greater pressure, not necessarily gravity, but greater pressure. And you think about the fact that the reason that, the original reason, not that he could fly, but he could jump in a single bound, Superman, was because he came from a planet with higher gravity. But again, it has nothing to do with pressure. I was like, so no, it's just like, this shouldn't be possible. This is just a dumb thing. But maybe they had some gravity beam that they were using to pull him up.
Yeah.
Or something. I didn't see anybody wielding that up there. And I have to say also, when the ship first appeared and Jody goes, "That's impossible." It's like, why do you keep saying it's impossible? Look, it's just a ship. There are little green things glowing on the bottom of it. How is that not possible? I don't get it. Quit saying that it's impossible. Obviously, it's happening.
This has never happened before.
Right. Yeah. Right. Now, the Brain of Morbius brings up something that I wanted to talk about next. And part of my question is, what did we think of I'm going to say Silurians, the Sea Devils overall? But I mean, to Brain of Morbius' point, what did we think about the CGI distortion of the Sea Devils to represent its speaking? I'd like to hear from both of you in terms of overall what you thought of the Sea Devils coming back. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Well, like I said earlier, I interpreted the blinky necklace thing to be a translator of some sort.
Wrong.
Well, yeah, but it's good for you to admit that you are wrong, Greg. I'm glad that I convinced you. So for me, I was instantly in on that. And I guess I don't know. Like, I hear people's criticism when we get new Sontarans, for example. Oh, do they look like the classic series? Do they look like the Russell T Davies version? And then when in the Flux, they kind of pulled back to the original series. So, I mean, these Sea Devils were almost like there was very little appreciable difference between them and the 72 Sea Devils in my mind, which I'm okay with. But I mean, I'm immersed in classic Who, and so I don't know, would a modern eye look at that and go, "Oh my God, that's a bit crap." For me, it didn't hit any of those like pressure points because to me, yeah, that's what a Sea Devil is supposed to look like. So I guess I would worry that maybe my aesthetic might not match what a general audience's might.
Were you happy to see that they looked like not harking back to Warriors of the Deep, not maybe taking the liberties that the Silurians took during the Moffat era, but that they looked like what the classic fans might be like, that's proper Sea Devil.
And even more so, I think that's maybe what got a lot of folks really intensely interested in this special, and having a lot of us coming into it thinking, wow, this is going to be really great. You've got classic era Sea Devils, you've got a pirate story. This is going to be really awesome. And so we build it up in our heads. And then, of course, it doesn't quite translate out that way on the pages, so to speak.
Robert?
Yeah, no, it seemed like all of the ingredients were going to be there.
Right. I mean, and I guess I'm really asking really just from not even so much the Silurians good grief, Sea Devils in the plot, but more the Sea Devils just as they look. And did they check all the boxes for you?
Yeah, the look I had no problem with.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think, Robert?
Well, let's get it right to start with.
Okay. I know what you're gonna do. Yep.
Eoscenes.
Listen, I watched the episode. I mean, this part I did get right in the episode. It did not say Legend of the Eocenes at the
No.
opening credits, okay? I'm just going to say.
The look for the Sea Devils is obviously it's the closest I think we've had for any returning monster. I hate to call them monsters; they're not really aliens from the classic series. I mean, this was literally built. I mean, these Sea Devils look more like the original Sea Devils than the ones in Warriors of the Deep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And the only thing that was really appreciably different is that the mouths of the Sea Devils in the 1972 serial moved when they spoke, unlike these Sea Devils. You'd think with CGI they'd like work that out. I think, and I noticed this more when I saw a better copy of it. It was like, you literally could see as he's talking his gills kind of moving. I'm assuming that they're gills or something, but his neck that was moving, and I think that was having that CGI effect I thought was better than the eyes. But yeah, I wish that the mouths had moved a bit more. Now, speaking to your thing about the translator, is it really a translator? Because if it's translating, wouldn't it be flashing not to the English syllables but to Chinese ones? Or does the TARDIS translator change flashing lights on things?
That's exactly right, Robert. Thank you for closing that loophole right there.
Because it was very interesting that everybody, before the TARDIS even lands, everybody in the village was speaking in English.
Now that would have been interesting to see a Sea Devil speak in Chinese. Didn't happen. So no, I mean, I agree. And I mean, it seems like everyone really, I mean, we like it. I mean, the problem is, I think that the Sea Devils are kind of fake looking to begin with, right? I mean, or is that once again the same sort of thing? For me, the disbelief of something looking like that. So even though I love how they looked in the story, that they're just kind of fake looking regardless, at least to me. But the eye blinking helped a great deal, and not even just blinking, the fact that when the chief Sea Devil would get mad, his brow would furrow. He'd be angry. He'd be almost kind of cute in a way, like how my cat would look when you can tell that they're angry because it's big eyes, but just anger.
Yeah, it worked less well when the brow was furrowing on the statue.
That's yeah.
But it was, yeah, it's I don't know. I mean,
don't cancel me, Bill.
These look better than kind of the plastic shape, the plastic form shaped heads that they had in the original Sea Devils. But I mean, I've always thought that the Sea Devil design is kind of interesting because they didn't go with anything that looked like the Silurians, especially since they're supposed to be related to them. And I find that very interesting in the fact that, the same way that we have different, Black, Asian, everybody, all these different races, too. There's like, they're not just, okay, so they had these different creatures that even when they introduced the new style of Silurians, which was a cheaper way of doing it, obviously, in the new series. But when they introduced that, it was like, yeah, this is what it should be like. It's like not every alien of the race should look like their Sontaran clones. That's fine for Sontarans because they are clones. But, there should be some differences between different species within the same. So I've actually kind of liked the Silurians and Sea Devils for that fact that they have different styles within the same alien species. But I don't know. I mean, it is a kind of a little out there, but at the same time, it's like, would, I suppose, our scientist here should tell us, would evolution have allowed creatures to develop like the Sea Devils, to look like that?
Oh, don't ask him. He thinks that the moon can fly through the universe. I mean, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Only the groovy 70s tunes,
you think that Mondas can fly through the universe?
Because that's the best
Greg.
Cyberman story.
No, I in terms of like just from an evolutionary standpoint, I don't see the sea devils as being wildly out of sync with what would be possible if there was a species that was adapted more to water. The original design in 72 makes sense. So
their stringy vests make sense to you, is what you're saying.
absolutely. Well, that's a fashion sense. So I mean, they were rocking it.
I was disappointed to see that you came on this broadcast without wearing one of those, and that is a huge miss.
Greg, let's both be honest. You told me I had to change before you'd even let me on camera. So I did show up with my
Yeah, he has his fisherman like string net underwear on.
from the waist down. I'm all Silurian.
Sea devil. I made that mistake earlier, but I don't think anyone saw it. So, I'm going to just say this, and this is going to be a departure from what I've talked with you about before, Robert, is that I do think that the Chibnall era had reintroduced classic series classic series villains or monsters design-wise better than anybody else. And why I say it the way I do is because at first I wasn't a fan of the Cybermen costumes that were brought out in Jodie's last previous to Flux. But I do think that overall, I think that they've done a really good job with the reimagining of some of those classic monsters. Santarans and Sea Devils, for me, really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I don't necessarily like some of their Dalek redesigns.
Fair.
But I mean, they're better than some of the stuff that we saw in 1996. But I would agree with all of the other creatures. I mean, I think the Santarans actually do look better. I think that the Cybermen, especially, I always liked the Cybermen design because it kept more or less the same body that they had from the Moffat era, and then more of a invasion style head, but updated. And I really liked that combination together.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Sea Devils. Now, there's also, we were just talking about this with the Silurians too, which hopefully everybody remembers that Chris Chibnall wrote the story that reintroduced the Silurians to the new series too. I've only seen this. I believe it's in a fanzine, and I can't remember which one. I want to say the frame, but it's not going to be the frame because they stopped making it. But it's there was a photo of a design for a Silurian head for
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
It was never. But then they decided to go the completely opposite route, which and it looked so good because it looked so reptilian and other things. And it was just like, I wish they had gone down this route, but maybe they thought that, okay, this will look a little too fake. And so they went with the design they did. I wish they had done like the elder that's in that story. The Hungry Earth. I think that I wish that he had been that design, and maybe only him, and all of the others could have been the female clones that they had.
Sure.
But as that was their warrior race, and they were supposed to be clones, and but the elder was still, this looks like the Silurians that we're used to and stuff. But and they didn't go that route. I'm not that upset about it. It's like a big deal, but it would have been interesting to see that style on the screen. Yeah,
absolutely. No, absolutely, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, one thing that I thought was interesting, and we're going to go down a rabbit hole a little bit, so let's try not to get too far, even though I want to lead us there. That you have, like, it took a while for the Cybermen to change over to, and maybe not take a while, but I mean, it seemed like that there was a progression with when Moffat took over and the Cybermen changed from the Russell era to the Moffat era. Are these just going to be all redesigned by the time we get back to the Russell era, or are we going to have that sort of kind of handoff? I mean, the Daleks, for example, they've pretty much stayed consistent since 2005, apart from the paradigm. it's going to be interesting to see what direction all this goes on a design level, let alone everything else. I mean, that's is exciting and kind of, scary at the same time for me.
Well, think about how much Cybermen have changed through the classic era.
Yes.
To me, that's the most consistently inconsistent villain or monster we've ever had. Is just like there's always a major revamp every so many years. So,
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that we didn't get updated Cybermen right away from Moffat was literally because it was more a budgetary thing. That's why we only had the one Cyberman in in Matt Smith's first season, because
Right.
it literally we need to put our design money somewhere else and not be redesigning Cybermen. So they just went with now it wasn't a Cybus. No, that was a Cybus Cyberman because it did have a C on it. But when they came back, then in Good Man Goes to War, they no longer had the C, so they were no longer Cybus, but they still were the same design. But then, being the redesign, the full redesign came in for Nightmare and Silver when they had more time. And again, you're not going to redesign Cybermen just to appear in like one scene in like a few Good Man Goes to War. So they waited until they had a full Cyberman story and then put the effort.
And even then, there was a handoff.
Yes.
Because there was still a Cybus sort of Russell era Cyberman, playing a big part in that.
Well, yeah, and if Steve Manford were here, I don't know that he is, but if he's watching, I mean, he will like point out to us several times, that the original intention for that story was for that to be a Mondosian Cyberman.
So true. To keep things moving a little bit, and I know that there's a lot we could talk about, but let's talk a little bit about the relationship between the Doctor and Yaz. That was something that's been built up for a while. So, we got some movement on that. Mike, what did you think about where we're at with that relationship now?
I've never been big into the Doctor having relationships with companions. For reasons brought up in the new series itself. Was it Tennant talking to Sarah Jane about the fact that you all wither and die and I keep going on forever. And so it never made sense to me for there to be companion Doctor relationships. So the fact that the Doctor kind of acknowledges that and kind of keeps Yaz at arm's length, to me, I'm like, because anything else would just, to me, feel weird. It's like you have someone who's only lived a few decades trying to relate to someone who's lived, well, more than thousands of years at this point, with the timeless child included as well. I'm glad it was addressed. To me, it feels like, it's familiar territory. We've already kind of gone down this road a couple times in the new series. But then again, maybe, I've got the longevity that I've watched all these episodes, and maybe they're writing it for people other than just me, who's seen this happen before. So to me, the whole Phasman thing is okay, but it's not what really drives me to watch Doctor Who. So so it felt like they were more consistent with the Doctor's character by having her say, it just doesn't work for me. But I don't know, Robert, what do you think?
Well, obviously, I'm all for the relationship, and I think that they need to move into the new series and not be like maintain a JNT stance of no hanky panky on the TARDIS, because we've all seen Rose and Tennant come out of the TARDIS, and it's obvious they've just been having sex. But
someone is.
But here it's. I think this is the problem with having short series and other things. It's like they're trying to force too much of a character arc story for this into too few episodes. I've shared this with Greg before, and I feel this is true. When I watched Flux and I saw the relationship between Yaz and the Doctor, it immediately became obvious, that something's happened between the last special and this, and they literally now Yaz and the Doctor are a couple, and I thought that throughout Flux. until we got to the moment where she had her little talk with Dan, and I was like, wait a minute, now you're taking that back, and it's like some of the things that have been happening between you guys is it wouldn't just happen because you guys are friends. Your relationship is on a different level than that, and now you're taking it back and saying it's not on that level yet. And I'm like, it doesn't really jive with what you've been showing me. And to be honest, I would have preferred that if we hadn't seen that, and we just came back at the beginning of Flux, and they were already a couple, and we missed out, and now we're just like picking up with everybody else, and Dan figuring out that they're a couple too, and along with us, because it's like it should be so natural that we don't need to see it happen on screen for it to just have already happened.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my preference, to be honest. Now, because we're like fitting it in, and we have to fit it into like Flux, Eve, Legend, and then the Centenary special. We only have 4 episodes to add in little bits, because you've got to do the adventure around those, to just little bits of character moments that you should have more breathing room to give these away. Because again, between Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils, stuff has happened. These the stuff that Yaz is asking Dan, and what's happening between her and the Doctor, all of that should have happened in between those 2 stories already. It's like what's happening? What? And it's obviously it's happening because we need to see it on screen, but these characters would have moved on in the weeks in between and already had these conversations, and wouldn't have waited for us to see them on screen. So I think it serves the characters poorly in that aspect.
And you and I talked about this before, and I guess where my thoughts on this is, first of all, I don't think there's much time between Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils. They're still wanting to get onto a beach. But I kind of looked at it, and you and I talked about this Sunday, Robert, was that I thought that, maybe where we are at Flux was where Yaz is not only coming to terms with her understanding of her love for the Doctor, but maybe also coming to terms with her own sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she never identified her as, someone who loved women, but she may even see it that way because she sees the Doctor on a different level altogether. But I think maybe there was some time that she wanted to kind of come to terms with her feelings, and maybe that was, and I like to think of it that way, that was what took her so long, that she was kind of slowly building to that belief that, okay, now I understand, I really do love her. Maybe, I don't know.
No, I agree. That's again the problem with watching a show where for budgetary reasons the number of episodes have been cut back, where we don't get to have these stories that where you can do more character development because you have the time to do that. And people complain now about having series that are like the standard television season, which was 20 to 22 episodes a season, but that also gave breathing room, and US seasons, not UK seasons, but so many shows now are down to 10 or 6 episodes, both streaming and even on TV, that if they're going to do a story arc across those episodes, they don't have time to do as much character building within those episodes too, because they don't have a throwaway episode or moments in episode that they can throw away, because they have to tell the overall season arc.
Well, and this is something that that the Brain Morbius brought up that I totally kind of thought at the time, and maybe we're both horribly wrong with it. And I mean, who are we to say who someone should love and not love? But when the Doctor is like, you are one of the greatest people I've ever known, to Yaz, I mean, it's like, sure, but I didn't see it. I didn't see the evidence for that. And I don't mean to be cruel about a character, but to me, it's the same thing as Clara, that, everyone kind of created Clara as the most important person, not only for the 11th Doctor, but throughout the Doctor's history. And I just didn't feel like that warranted it. So I don't know. I mean, it just seems like that is, maybe because I'm such a fan of folks like Sarah Jane Smith and, Tegan and Ace and all that suddenly she's like this person who it's great and she's very loyal, but to say she's one of the greatest people I've ever known, it's like, boy, I don't know. That just doesn't resonate with me personally.
It gets back to the fact that we don't have as much time to build the characters, even now in the more current series, because, I mean, you could say what kind of a character Rose was, even Martha, Donna. There were more character building moments for them. There aren't as many for, and I don't know that it's a Chibnall issue or it's just because, again, the number of episodes have been cut back. It's, but it literally is, yes. But out of the original 3 companions for Jodie, I've always thought that Yaz was the best of the 3 of them. I mean, Ryan's kind of a cipher. He has certain things that, that we know about his character, but it's not things that really tell us anything about who he is as a person. And the same with Graham. Graham's a little bit better of a character, but I always thought Yaz was the best constructed of those 3 original companions. Now, I concede again that I don't think that Yaz is as well written as a character, well fleshed out as a character as some of the like, certainly not as fleshed out as like Amy or Rose or some of the other companions that we've seen in the past.
Right. No. And I think what was this from Bill? Yeah. Do showrunners think their characters are the greatest ever? And I get your point, Bill. It's like, obviously they're going to try to make you're going to write their characters to be important. And, they're not going to write their characters and be like, Yaz, I like you, but I kind of like Dodo better. I mean, you're not going to get something like that. I mean, I would think, right? I mean, I get your point, Bill. But it's still at the same time, it's like, I would like to see, there's some characters that, like, for example, when someone says that Donna Noble is noble, for lack of a better term, I agree. I fully buy into that. Donna Noble, who wanted to be, she was ready to be the Doctor's equal, the Doctor's partner, the Doctor's everything. I bought into that. And her losing that memory was hurtful. It was hard to take. That and they didn't have to make it into a big deal about it. It just spoke for itself. When someone says, "You're the greatest ever," I didn't see it.
I think
maybe it's more to do with the writing, because it is a kind of a Chibnall issue, more so in his era. But I go back to, he doesn't have as many episodes to have more character moments to let these people. But I mean, we kind of knew who Donna's character was after the Runaway Bride.
Yeah. And that was a character, and I won't get us down this rabbit hole, but that was a character that we actually saw an improvement, that we actually saw growth. Where when I saw her at the end of the Christmas Invasion in that little bit, I'm like, what the hell is this? And by the time we got to Journey's End, it's like, please don't leave. Please don't leave. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to her. Don't do this to us. That's powerful. And to be fair, if something happens to Yaz, I'm not going to be happy about it. It'll be very hard to see, especially knowing the background. But I could track with that progress from Donna.
Well, you think of the 3 showrunners, who is the strongest when it comes to writing characters, and that's Russell T Davies.
Well, Christ, he still, I mean, he leaves Doctor Who, he goes on and makes a string of highly successful. I mean, the fact that Doctor Who got him back is mind-blowing. I don't want to get into that though, because that's a whole other conversation, right? That's the future, and that's incredible. Real fast, is there anything else that you all want to talk about Legend of the Sea Devils before we move on to the big elephant in the room? Y'all good on that?
Did you get to say your piece about Yaz, Mike?
We don't care.
For the most part, other than you're wrong about Yaz and Graham. Graham is far superior, way up here. Yaz is further down.
You know who I liked? I did like Graham quite a bit, but I liked Ryan, actually.
Oh, yeah. What I liked most about Graham was his journey through grief through the 2 seasons, where you saw him actually struggling, not for like a few minutes, or even an episode or two, but you saw him working through grief and working through his grief by traveling with the doctor and by
Yes.
distracting himself.
Well, and I still say the title for Jodie's first episode, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, is not about the doctor. It's about Grace.
Right.
Grace fell back to Earth after she fell off that tower. I truly believe that is what that title is about.
Yeah. To me, like, Russell T Davies is great on character. The part I love about the Chib era, for me personally, and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, would be more like, he doesn't do as well with characters, but he does do a good job, I think, in bringing in issues. So, you talk about grief or about mental illness or people who just struggle. And you see that as like themes that run through several episodes. I kind of like that approach, or it's at least been a part that's resonated with me.
Now take a screen grab of this, because no one's ever in the universe said this before.
Yes.
And no one will ever say it again. And just know that I'm in control of the comments, so that you will never see that again on this program.
Pure coincidence that we're seeing a lot of pro Greg comments and not so many.
There was a lot of pro Greg comments, but that's because the people have spoken. They're pro Greg. But to your point, and I'm kidding, of course, is that let me ask you this though, Mike. Do you not think that they're heavy-handed, the issues?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm totally down with that. Like when it comes to global warming, yeah, we should be shaking people by the shirt collars at this point. And it's completely from my own perspective as a science educator. We've talked very nicely about it for over 30 years, and everyone just ignores it. So yeah, let's grab people by the lapels and shake them a little bit, because we can't keep ignoring it and kicking it down.
I think it's the other way around. Yeah, I mean that's
well, and I think that it's a fair criticism, right? That sometimes it's in your face, or it's over the top. But my gosh, when has Doctor ever been over the top?
I'm not a big fan of some of the stuff that Chibnall had done in that realm, but I wasn't alive. I mean, I certainly wasn't. I didn't understand the messages that were being put into stuff like Monster of Peladon. I wouldn't have been able to make that correlation. So it's an interesting thing to see how people back then would have taken some of those, social issues, and was that heavy-handed for other people?
Sure.
I don't know. So I mean, it's relative, right?
Yeah. Well, and I would say too, we live in a very unique time of general overall polarization socially. So that I think people tend to have very strong reactions, just because we tend to be more polarized, not just as society, but even within fandom. Oh my God, I hate The Rise of Skywalker. Oh my God, I love The Rise of Skywalker. Oh, I hate the J.J. Abrams Star Treks. Oh, I love the J.J. Abrams Star Treks. It's even with like Jodie's tenure, either people love it or they hate it, and you don't get a whole lot of in between.
Well, there you go. See, you just brought that up. So J.J. Abrams needs to remake Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Just to crap on one last thing there.
Anyway, so why don't we do this? Robert, do you have anything else to say about Legend of the Sea Devils?
No.
Nope.
No.
Then let's talk about... I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if anyone in the internet saw that.
It's called Legend of the Sea Devils?
It is called Legend of the Sea Devils because they thought it worked so well for this episode that they wanted to name it that again. So,
my God, what I'm shocked about is the Doctor's going to die in the next episode. That's the truly shocked me about that trailer.
So, okay.
Will she, though?
The only thing I really want to say about that, though, is it better not be a 50-minute episode.
It better be 100 minutes.
Exactly.
One for every year of the BBC. Absolutely. It's a centenary episode. I agree. And it
should go black. We should have a black screen for the years they were off the air for the war.
That's Nick Seidler talking right now. And then here's another fan here. Ace must have K9 with her regarding the 2020 lockdown special. Farewell, Sarah Jane. We're already putting rules to their return.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, the fact that you have, I mean, now Elijah called it in the chat that, Ace was going to be back. And I just wanted to reply, like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And of course, Elijah knows what he's talking about. But even Tegan was a surprise. The big thing that I'm hearing from a lot of people, though, is that they're putting all that into a trailer. What are they not putting into the trailer? Because they think there's more surprises coming.
Carol Ann Ford.
Carol Ann Ford in a casket will be in the episode called Centenary Cemetery is the name of the episode. And it's going to be amazing. Boy. Yeah. So, I mean, Mike, your first thoughts now, first of all, we're on a chat that everyone's like waiting to talk about it because somebody was not watching the episode in a timely manner.
Yes. So we're in a group chat. I'm the last person to see Legends of the Sea Devils. Still hadn't seen it yet. And of course, all you guys are itching to talk about the trailer. So I finally just had to shut off the phone for like 20 minutes and just let you guys have at it there and keep my nose out of the group chat.
I have a theory about that though, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill's on here. I think Bill wanted us to talk about the trailer only because he wanted to let us know that he texted Sophie Aldred about it. I think that's the only reason why he wanted to talk about the trailer so badly. And because honestly, after you said I'm shutting off, that's all he said. Jeff said he texted her as well. And really that was all the chat was. So
wow. I didn't know that Bill knew Sophie Aldred.
He stayed in her house.
Bill, why has Bill never said any of these things?
Stayed at her mom's house.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they don't live together. I don't know. I don't know where these people live. I mean, I don't care. I don't care where Sophie Aldred lives. Okay. But now I know, and knowing's half the battle. So, I mean, yeah.
So it had been spoiled for me. I saw something on Twitter before I saw the trailer. So I knew something was up. I kind of guessed that a few of the old companions were going to be in this trailer. So I was watching one of my daughters while we were watching the trailer. And it really impacted one of my daughters in particular. She had a very strong emotional reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, multiply that by however many folks around the world here who've been lifelong fans. And I think, that Chibs has certainly set the bar, the level of expectation pretty high. And it's like, for example, when we think about the 50th anniversary with Moffat and just how great that story was, but how easily you could screw up, any one of a multitude of elements of that story and have it just kind of fall apart. So my only concern is that Chibs really is able to kind of carry through on what he's promising us here. Because I think for a lot of us, we were watching the Sea Devils and we're like, oh my God, this is going to be great. And then it was kind of, and so I would hate for that to happen on this final episode for Jodie's sake, for the fans' sake, for like the returning companions. So I really, really hope it's going to be good.
Mike, did you notice that was Tegan right away? Because I know some people who might or may not be on this current live stream who did not notice that was Tegan.
Who missed out that was Tegan? Who does not recognize?
I did. I couldn't. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Janet's really old. But yeah.
Here, let me put up this comment by Janet Fielding. She's on here right now.
And I was like, so after it was over, I was like, I turned to Greg and go like, who was that before Ace? There was some lady, I don't know.
Yet you got the whole background of Madam Ching, and yet you don't know Janet Fielding when she comes on the screen.
Kind of like the Dan, I know, this certain specific history, but yeah, no.
I think some people have some very valid points when it comes to this. Let's see here. Tristan is like, we can all pray it's not too cringy. Kind of what you're talking about, Mike. And I guess Mike and Robert, the thing that comes to my mind is like, this is obviously Jodie's last story. This is also part of the BBC centenary celebrations. I mean, there's a lot riding on this thing. You know, I mean, it has to be really a daunting task for Chibnall.
Yeah, like you
think worries about it too much. He's just going to get on, like, especially from reading that article today. He's like, he doesn't really think about, like, he's like, I have a job to do and I'm going to do it. And I mean, he thinks that he thinks that he's creating something good. Obviously, he's not going to put out something that he thinks is trash. Whether it is or not is
I agree with that. I agree with that totally. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that's a very, very valid point of no one is creating this stuff to not be the best it can be. And I think that's a super valid point, Robert, that I wanted to bring up earlier. But everyone's comments have been very respectful. That you're right, that no one in that production through the last 3.5 years, you know, actually much longer, right? Because 2018 is when she debuted. No one's trying to make anything bad. You know, we may not agree with everything. I may not agree with everything, but they are all doing the very best that they can. I think that's a very valid point. And let's see. Felicity says that Janet looks way better than a woman who was on TV in the early 80s has a right to look. Yeah, I mean, they all look good. I mean, some of the shots, I mean, I think part of it might be also not to make it better for Robert, but I think part of it's like you don't expect to see Tegan and Ace in a next time trailer for Doctor Who these days. I mean, that was really surprising.
No, and I mean, I literally every time I watched it back since, I'm like, how could I have not known that was Janet? But at the same time, when I was watching it, it was kind of like, I don't know, maybe I was zoning out or something, but it was like literally, I was like, I know this has to be somebody important, but I can't quite place it. I am getting old too, and then maybe a little senile. But so no, I didn't recognize her right off. I was thinking it was looked a lot like Linda Barron, and she's dead.
Linda Barron, oh my God, it does not look like Linda Barron anymore.
Well, no, in my head, that's what was going through my head at the time. I was like,
sure. So did you?
That could have been Linda Barron. Anyway.
Did you all see? And this is for everybody out there, okay? And I will play the next time trailer if you want to see it again. That there is a shot of Ace hitting the Dalek wearing her jacket. And it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see. But if you still frame it, which I can't do it if I were to replay it.
Did she have a baseball bat?
She does have a baseball bat.
Okay.
That is really interesting that they went with that. So I mean, and you can watch it, and it's just like, yeah, she's wearing the jacket. It's such a thing. Now Jeff, who I only listened to, he asked us to play it again. So there's a shot that you're going to see a Dalek that's going to be on the left-hand side. And I was going to get a screen grab of it, and I apologize. It's out there though if you want to see it. But I'll play the trailer, and it's after you see Tegan and Ace the first time, and she's hitting a Dalek with a baseball bat. She's wearing her jacket. Okay, so take a look. Let's take a look at it one more time. It's right before the Master says, "Welcome to the end of your existence." So
yeah, I saw the shot with the Daleks. It was going by quickly. I didn't see it. Yeah.
You have to really. I mean, I didn't know about it unless I saw someone else post it. It is certainly not me going, "Oh my God, it's Ace." It was very much like someone posted it, and because unlike the three of us, apparently, that we did not go through this frame by frame, like literally frame by frame. It is not easy to see.
It's out there on Twitter. A really good shot of it I've seen on Twitter earlier today.
Yes. And what did they say Ace was doing now, based on what she was mentioned in the Sarah Jane Adventures? Can anyone hear me?
See,
you're talking to us. I thought it was.
I'm just talking to the wall. Linus, what did Sarah Jane do when she left?
Who the hell is Sarah Jane?
In Sarah Jane, in Death of the Doctor, Sarah Jane says that Ace is running a charitable Earth, which she is also running in the book that Sophie wrote, or helped write, where she met the 13th Doctor. And literally, basically, that same thing happens. Is she has the baseball bat because the doctor made her another one afterwards, and she grabs her jacket, and at one point in the book too, and becomes Ace again. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because it doesn't necessarily seem like it from this clip, but we don't know if they're going to, Ace. I said Ace at Childhood's End. That's Ace.
Robert's now yelling at the people watching. Okay.
Getting a little
I was going to say, and Jeff said, because Felicity asked who was the guy from Flux. She's happy to see him, and then Jeff is like Finder. I'm like, Finder. I think I paid enough attention to
Vinderloo.
It's Vinderloo. His father is Lister from Red Dwarf, and only because of the Vinder reference. By the way, that's the only reason why I'm saying that. Time to move on. So yes. And so here's the question. I saw it on Twitter. Someone said that they believe that there's a point, and they explained it much better than I did, that Yaz was in the Master's company for a while, and that in back Spyfall or whatever it was, or however it turned out, or maybe I don't even remember where, because none of this era resonates with me. And that this might be a long game, that Yaz actually ends up kind of turning against the Doctor, and we don't know anything that can prove that, but there is a shot of her in the TARDIS that she's pointing a gun. The last thing that the Doctor says in that trailer is Yaz. I mean, has anyone thought of that at all? And what would you think about that if that were true?
Well, there was a character that was behind the Master when he was talking there, and I thought that looked like Yaz, but I didn't examine this trailer, obviously, because I haven't seen this clip with Ace. So,
well, you definitely would be writing the character out at the end with Jodie's regeneration. So
we're talking, but now we're getting into spoilers for an episode that hasn't been aired yet.
Well, I mean, it's just theories. It's not even spoilers. Yep. It's a theory.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea that hadn't occurred to me.
I mean, I guess the thing is, it's like, because I mean, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with just, thinking aloud about this and conjecturing, I guess. But I guess the thing is, it's like, how tragic would that be, that the whole time that it's just like a long game playing? Would Mike, do you think that would diminish her character, Yaz's character?
I think dramatically it would be interesting. I think it would really ruffle a lot of feathers in fandom, I would think, personally. So I don't know if they'd actually go through with it, pull that trigger, metaphorically and literally speaking. But I mean, it would be dramatically very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And Robert, I mean, do you like to think about stuff like that, or do you prefer just to kind of just see it happen and play out and not really give much thought to it?
Well, I don't mind spoilers at all, because I don't. I think spoilers is the wrong term for it, because to me, anytime I find out anything about a story, it's like that's the first time I'm finding it out. I'm happy about whether I'm reading it in a script 3 months before this show is going to be broadcast, or whether I am growing up. I read half of the novelizations before I saw the actual the television versions. So I don't consider any of them really spoilers. And to be honest, when you find out some of those things, they actually make you more interested in watching the episode. So, which is it's exactly what next time trailers are designed to do, is make you want to come back to watch.
And what this did on a huge level.
Yeah. But there are people out there who avoid next time trailers for that reason. Because they don't want to have even that bit. And I mean, good luck avoiding this for the next 5 months. But I suppose there are people out there without the internet. But anyway, it's I don't specifically go out and seek out spoilers for Doctor Who anymore. But if I find out stuff, I find it interesting, and it will make me show up. Yeah, when Elijah mentioned the Sophie, I was like, oh, that'll be interesting if that's what they choose to do. And I suppose if, for it's also supposed to be a centenary special for the BBC. I mean, last time we had a special it's like the anniversary specials have been for Doctor Who's anniversary, not necessarily for the BBC. And so it'll be interesting to see, okay, we're not going to bring in other doctors, we'll bring in other companions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you wonder? Go ahead.
I want the
Sorry.
episode to be called Journey's End too.
Well, and so do I. Also too, because it's a BBC centenary, I'm hoping that Muffin the Mule makes an appearance in the episode as well, because that would make a lot of sense. Something else I noticed, and I talked to you about it, Robert, was the fact that night that trailer aired with Legend, I mean, obviously Legend of the Sea Devils aired with it. I mean, we seem to kind of forget that a little bit. But the night that all aired, you had Gentleman Jack on afterwards that Peter Davison is in. So you had one night on BBC One where Janet Fielding and Peter Davison were on the same night on BBC One. And yeah, sure, they're not the same program, but I thought it was really interesting that that happened. And I find that stuff kind of fun anyway, at least.
I honestly was more surprised when I saw Sandra Dickinson show up in The Batman.
Yeah, well, that's fine. So yeah, we have the centenary sometime in the fall, right? November or something like that. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anything else you two want to talk about with that trailer at all?
What's up with the Cyberman, the lone Cyberman guy?
Rashad.
Yeah.
I thought you were a Chibnall era fan.
Well, he got miniaturized. So
yeah, he got miniaturized. So
yeah, but also remember, this is a time travel show.
Oh, now you tell me, Robert.
They kept that a secret, didn't they? You had to. It had a lot to do with Madam Ching. And once you know what she's up to in her brothel, that's when the time travel really comes into play there. And folks, I mean, as Brandon Morbius brought up, and I was actually just talking with some people over at Alexandra Palace in London this week, because I'm going to be doing some stuff and maybe even going over to the UK to help them. They were quick to point out to me when I'm talking about the centenary of BBC that yes, it is. Radio is what we're talking about here. We're talking about the beginning of radio. Television, if I'm not mistaken, did not begin on BBC as a broadcast until 1936 from Alexandra Palace. Mm-hmm. So, look at that. There we go. Yes, thank you very much. But here's the thing I told Alexandra Palace, which I don't know if they're happy that I mentioned it or not, that I'm like, well, we could wait for 1936 to celebrate 100 years of BBC television, but I'm not sure there's going to be a BBC around at that point. I don't know if there's going to be a BBC around in the next couple of years, to be honest. They want to get rid of the license fee. So that's nothing more than just kind of what I'm saying. But I mean, I'm not trying to create something there. I'm just saying, though, that there's people who really don't want it around anymore. So, whatever.
We should do an album, maybe like a song. To
like
BBC.
BBC in Distress?
Yes.
Let's all send it our SOS.
Bring it back now. We won't take less.
I know who could produce it.
Hey, a few people,
I can get someone involved here. He's done similar before to great effect.
He would be very willing to jump in on this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I could only imagine the D-level celebrities that will happily take part in this. Paula Wilcox, where are you? So that being said,
aren't
yes,
license fees just very similar to your Netflix monthly subscription? It's and again,
you don't have a choice though.
That, but yes, you don't have a choice. But if that were the case, and the BBC were to okay, that all goes away, and then you reform under another corporation that's is a streaming platform.
but it's so much more than just television. That's
Oh,
the
I
thing
know,
that
I know.
but the problem is that there's a lot of people that are just sick and tired of all that money going to the BBC, and they're sick of like a lot of and we're not talking even television, we're just talking in general of the quality of service. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years for sure. I think that things are going to change, and it's probably not completely coincidental. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's completely coincidental that Bad Wolf is taking over Doctor Who while the BBC is in this kind of struggle, because that will, regardless of what happens to the BBC, I think that will save Doctor Who and whatever the properties are that are created from it. That's just my opinion, though.
Well, yeah, because the corporation would still own, even if the BBC is dissolved. All of those ownerships and copyrights could be sold on to other, and there are probably people just waiting to grab those up. But that's why
Yep.
I'm saying that maybe there's something else that's going on. I mean, right now, Bad Wolf just literally has the rights to produce it. They can't sell it worldwide. They still have to. The BBC still gets to sell it. So. It's just a production deal they have with Bad Wolf. So, but things could change in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So in November or whatever, they're going to have the centenary episode. Will you two join me again, and we can talk about that at that point?
Oh, I guess.
Whoop, you lost Mike. Okay, so anyway. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
I was just kidding. I'll be there. I'll be there.
I have the power in this live stream. So that being said, I liked it better when you're up here. So that being said, folks, if you liked what we did tonight, can you please let us know if there's anything that you would like the three of us to talk about Doctor Who wise in the future? We've done a live stream also about the Quatermass Quatermass stories, as well as some Nigel Neal, but also about missing episodes and tape trading and whatnot. If you enjoyed what we did, please let me know. Because these are two of my greatest friends, and I love talking Doctor Who with them. Oh man, yeah, you're not faring well, Mike. You're not doing well in this. I don't want to alarm you, but people don't like you. Okay.
If I go to my Facebook feed, I'm seeing lots of pro Mike things that are not coming on to the live stream here. It's weird. It's unusual.
Yeah, those are your daughters.
Yeah. And they told me at council room they don't like you either. So folks, I also want to alert you all that in May, I'm going to be having a conversation with Mike Seeley about Doomwatch. We're going to have a conversation about that. And, Mike Seeley wrote the book through originally Milk, but it's going to be someone else has picked it up, and I can't remember the name, like 10 Harvest Books or something like that. They redone it, but he is excellent with Doomwatch. Also, go to my YouTube page. We had that conversation with Jazz Wiseman about the Restoring the Avengers. It's 3 hours long, but it's really good in terms of not wanting to know how those 60s episodes were restored. And
we're working on 3 hours here.
Well, we're running it, and I have a pizza to bake. It's not going to bake itself. So, thank you both very much. If there are any parting words you want to say about what we talked about tonight or anything?
People should like Doctor Who more. I mean, I think that it has improved greatly. I think that, again, I wasn't a fan of a lot of Chibnall's first season, and I think he's like slowly started to turn around, but it just the episodes weren't as enjoyable, but I really find myself enjoying them now, especially since Flux, that it feels a lot more like Doctor Who that I remember. And I like the characters again. I like what I'm seeing on TV. Again, it's not like the best. It's not like I'm comparing this to, Caves of Androzani or something, but it is a lot more fun.
I would have to admit that I was down on the first two series of Jodie's, and you and I, Robert, had watched a lot of Flux together, especially at Chicago TARDIS this last year, and I
When people
really
wouldn't
bought
shut up.
into it. What's that?
When people wouldn't shut up during the episode.
Some of those are on the chat, you know.
Yeah, I know. Hi, Bill.
But yeah, you know, that's the thing. And what the hell, Chuck? I like Mike's VHS collection. Seems too far away. Unlike Greg's collection, maybe he likes them out of reach. You know, first of all, we don't talk about anything about what Mike has in the background because who cares? First of all, you know, sometime we're going to have you on and just talk about scarves, and I mean that seriously because it's amazing what you do. It truly is.
We could spend hours talking about,
and we won't. Don't worry.
Well, you can pretend it doesn't have to be live. You can just sit here and smile. Keep me on mute the whole time. It doesn't have to go out. I'll be happy still at the end.
Held to the no, but we could talk about a little bit. I could bring out the at some point the scarf that you made for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, but yeah, I mean, here's the funny thing, Chuck. It's like two very different collections, right? Mike's is all NTSC VHS and mine's all PAL. That's kind of cool, isn't it? That we have both, literally the entirety of both collections in one shot. That's kind of cool.
And I only have DVDs, so.
Wow. And here's Bill. Mike, no one likes you. Mike's background is way more interesting than the foreground. Wow. Holy cow. I
have to Google what is the difference between background and foreground.
Right. Well, you're the foreground. Let's just be very clear about what's happening here. You are the foreground. And Chuck's is all NTSC as well. You know, I'm not going to say I dislike people who have NTSC videotapes, but I do. I mean, that's really all that it comes down to. I'm just kidding. I once had a collection of NTSC VHSs as well, but then that
Greg,
was in 1996. What?
You should do like a video thing on like the VHS releases. I bet that would be really popular. Maybe you could do one about Trial of a Time Lord. That's a really good VHS release to do.
You know,
Mike.
Sometimes these things, because they're pieces of art, take a little while to get finished and released. Here's the reason. I edited myself into the corner with the Trial of a Time Lord video, and I screwed up when I originally recorded it, so I have to kind of do another record of what I screwed up. But really, the screw up is Peter Crocker's. So that's because I needed to point something out in the Blu-ray release, because little do you all realize that he used, instead of the broadcast version, he used the 71 edit. Not even the 71 edit, I think the raw footage, and it actually had effects in it that later versions didn't have. So instead of having effects in trial 1 through 4 that shouldn't have been there, he went to the wrong source. And I had to put that into the video. Then I said it wrong myself. And now we're in this conundrum that, you know, we're currently in. Well,
you got to jump on that. That sounds really fascinating.
No, you're going to love it. And you're going to wish that you didn't mock me. That's what you're going to be like. You're going to regret the fact that you mocked me, and vengeance will be mine. Did I say vengeance? I meant vengeance, actually.
Well, I think vengeance on Varos is going to be yours very soon.
Yes. Any day now.
Hey, listen, I want to move on from Trial so I can go to War Machines. That's the next one I'm going to do. So, you know, we all want to move on, Mike Rogers.
All right. You can just mute me now at this point.
All righty. Well, everyone, thank you so very much. Gentlemen, do you have anything to say before we head off?
I like Yaz.
I'm glad you said it, because I bought you a T-shirt that says that. So that's great.
Yeah. Now, like, Sean will expect me to show up at Gallifrey and wear it or something.
Oh, that's funny. All right. From that, can we also do, Jeff's like, can we also do a live about upcoming 4K releases of the Cushing films? Absolutely, we can. Sure. I just roped you all into that.
We need to find somebody from that can tell us about how Studio Canal kept like throwing them curveballs left, right, and center.
Right. Let's see. Even though he didn't work on them, Jazz, you're needed. Tell us about how they had a version of the two Peter Cushing films with with the opening titles to the Avengers on them. So,
and we were talking about all our various versions the other night. Somebody should put together like a YouTube video of all of the various releases of those two movies.
no one should do that.
Oh my gosh.
No one should do that. All right. So I have the Peter Cushing films on VHS beta.
Ooh,
And
You have them on
is that
beta?
where you stopped? You're just like, yeah, I don't need it anymore. This is
I never
good
got
enough.
the beta.
Yeah, I got the VHS on PAL, and I know you have that on PAL, Robert, as well.
Yeah.
So let's everyone has been very kind. We are pushing 3 hours or 2.5 hours at least. So thank you all very much. Join me for the Doom Watch talk. We're gonna be back. If you want anything, any ideas, and I know a couple have been put out there, maybe the three of us can combine our efforts and do that.
Mhm.
Mike,
Sure.
Robert, thank you so very much. This was a lot of fun tonight. I hope you had fun too.
Most definitely.
Bye.
All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you all soon. Take care, everybody. Even my recording is just like we're done. They're just done with me. So we're just gonna go to the final screen. Thank you all very much tonight.
Boo.
Nothing is working. My computer's like, get off the internet.
Woohoo!